Ready? Okay,
Yes,
here we go.
I'm ready.
Welcome to another episode of Talk Your Shift. I am Mel, and unfortunately, Dom could not make it today, so I am going solo, but not completely solo, because my friend Lynn is here with us today. Yay! Woo! Insert applause. Okay, so if you haven't listened to our show before, we talk about life and we talk about changes that we've gone through, mental wellness, and today we are going to talk about Juneteenth. Travel writer and a freelance writer and just social justice-y in all the ways. So this is my friend Lynn Brown.
Hello.
So, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. We're here. It's happening.
I know. It took a very long time for me to get it together today. And Lynn has been very gracious the entire time. All right. So, normally for our first segment, I read like a little meme and then we kind of talk about it a little bit.
Okay.
So, that's what we gonna do. So, do. All right. Today on Juneteenth, the day we celebrate the end of slavery, the day we memorialize those who offered us hope for the future, and the day when we renew our commitment to the struggle for freedom. By Angela Davis.
Nice.
Let's start off with, for people who don't know what Juneteenth is.
Right.
Let's start off, if you don't know what Juneteenth is,
Yeah.
why are you late? But yeah.
So basically what Juneteenth is, well, like the quote said, it's a celebration of the end of slavery. So the history of it is that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. However, not everybody that needed to know about that did, meaning a lot of people that were enslaved in the South just didn't get notice because, we didn't have Facebook and Twitter, cell phones, right? Like somebody had to come and tell you.
Yeah.
And so Juneteenth, I think it was June 17th, that the Union Army during the Civil War made it out to Texas. I think it was Galveston, Texas was the furthest site of enslavement still in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And I think it was a year or two later after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed that the Union Army actually made it out that far, and the people that were enslaved there learned that they had been freed and actually were able to leave. So that's what Juneteenth was. And so historically, it was kind of a celebration in the African-American community where people would throw barbecues and people would kind of spend time with their relatives and stuff like that. But it wasn't until a couple years ago that it was made a national holiday. So finally.
Yeah, I remember it being becoming a national holiday and learning about it because of you. So I will be specifically posting her articles like in the description below so you guys can take a read and dive a little bit deeper into it because I'll definitely link her website because she's got a lot of information there. But yeah, and you know what's so crazy too is that like being a travel writer, I feel like you're always in the South.
Yeah, so I do like history and culture within travel, and like I specialize in sort of African American and Native American history.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, I was doing a travel guide to the South that unfortunately got killed by COVID, but that's sort of become my specialty in terms of like the area of the world really that I know the most about, and the area of history and culture that I know the most about is sort of African American, Native American, the intersections of those two and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I don't think, as long as I've known you, I don't think I've ever asked you, like, what got you into this? Like, was there, like, a moment in your life where you were like, I know exactly where I'm headed? Like...
It's interesting. So I have always wanted to be a writer. Like, since I was very little, I wrote a book in kindergarten, apparently. If you ask my mother, I made, like, a little picture book when I was very little. So I always knew I wanted to be a writer. And I think in high school in particular, I got really interested in like Native American history and culture and social justice because of my dad. My dad's family is Native, but I don't really know them very well. And so that was my way of learning about them, was to like really dive into kind of Native issues, Indigenous issues. And then that kind of obviously expanded. So, well, if we're talking about Indigenous issues, what about African American issues? And so for a while, it was all separate, where it was like I was doing writing fiction, and I was working for nonprofits, like, mostly Native nonprofit organizations. And then I think I just started doing them together when I was in school. Because I did, my undergrad was like, it was an interdisciplinary studies degree, and it was like, I did a thesis paper that was media representations of Indigenous people. And then in my master's, I did an MFA in creative writing, and I minored in African American literature. So it's like, all of the stuff that I was interested in got kind of blended together, and I was just lucky enough to be able to make my writing career around that, because it was stuff that I knew about and stuff that wasn't really getting written about, particularly in travel writing, which I know is kind of, it sounds very funny. Like, I like to tell people that I write about history, culture, and place, because it's travel writing, not like top 10 hotels, but like, where do you go to learn about this, this marginalized community, this history, et cetera, is more like what I write about in travel.
That's just so awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I can listen to her talk about this stuff all the time, because I'm just like, she's just so freaking cool. I used to be her assistant.
Yes, she was a great assistant.
Yes, and we experienced some really interesting stuff. So I definitely was there for some of the travel, and
yeah, we did the Mississippi Blues Trail together, which was it's actually one of my favorite trips, because it was so interesting, and it was so cool to go with you as a musician in particular. Like,
oh my God, I loved it.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like, it was just really interesting to kind of, like, I don't know, like, the history there is interesting, but then, like, having you there as a musician to kind of talk about the music and the history of the music, and like, that was really cool. And also, like, that like hotel, quote unquote, that we stayed at.
This is, and I take full responsibility for this. I'm not even going to lie. Okay, so this is what happened. Lynn told me to call these people, and they were going to set up the press trip. I said, okay, great. So I call these people, they set up the press trip. And here's the part I forgot. I forgot to go through the different places of interest that they recommended for the trip. Most of it was brilliant. Most of it was fantastic. Oh my God, do you remember that spot, that hole-in-the-wall spot where we got those ginormous steaks?
God, yes.
Oh
yes.
my! And then the other spot where we got like the yummy little mini crab claws. That was like, I don't even remember what it was. It was
they
just
were in
buttery.
some kind of spicy. I don't remember the name of that place, but the place that we got the giant steaks is actually it's a famous place.
Oh my God, it was so good.
Oh, see, now I'm gonna have to give you the name, because now
well,
I can't
she's
remember,
got some articles, and
Yes.
I believe that she speaks about where we went.
Yeah.
It was great. But there was a part where I fucked up, guys. So
it wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault.
I didn't even know that like, and here's the other thing. You don't know that things exist until someone just nonchalantly suggests that you do this thing.
Yeah.
So we met up with the what was the guy's title? Like, I don't remember.
It was probably the Visitors Bureau, like the person from the Visitors Bureau. And it was like Greenwood. Was it Greenwood, Mississippi?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it was Greenwood, Mississippi. And we were staying in, quote unquote, historic workers' cabins.
Yeah.
AKA the slave quarters.
Yeah.
Like, across from the cotton field. It was.
Could you understand how devastated I was when we got there? And it was like, I'm gonna put a picture, because it was so creepy, and I felt so shitty when we got there, because the thing was, the guy he had lunch with us.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, so we're supposed to be staying over at this spot and whatever. And he's like, yeah, it's really, did he use the word quaint or cute, or it's
something
nice.
like that? Yeah.
Something.
Yeah.
It just didn't sit right.
He never indicated, like, oh, that's a little weird.
Nope.
Like, to send these two brown women to go sleep in the slave quarters. Like, it never occurred to him that was weird. But actually, so what's interesting is, so since we went on that trip, people have been talking about that there were Airbnbs of old slave quarters and stuff like that.
Like in more places, what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Oh,
And
shit.
people had been listing them on Airbnb. So you live in the big house and you've got the slave quarters behind you, so you're going to rent it out as an Airbnb. There was a big thing about it, and they, I know they took them off of Airbnb.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. But like now I'm like, what about this hotel? Like what, like what, how, it's interesting. It was an interesting thing, but it was also terrifying because it was like haunted.
Oh my God.
It was hella haunted.
Yeah, no, it was super haunted. And this what happened. We didn't realize till the day after when we were getting the fuck out of that place, that there was a pamphlet. Do you remember?
Yes.
That there was a
my
pamphlet on the
God.
coffee table in the living room. Because, like, I feel like we got there, we put our stuff in, we were like, oh, God.
We were already
and then
weirded
we
out.
left to go
to some other.
Yeah, I think we went out to dinner, or we went to go check out the area, whatever. And we got back, and like
it was nighttime.
It was nighttime. Oh my God! Do you remember we were driving? So it was pitch black. We were driving, and we were listening to this indigenous like rock band that you had playing.
Yes.
So the drums are like pounding, right? We're like down the road from a cemetery.
Yep, from the one where
a famous blues
musician. Robert
musician.
Johnson is buried. Yeah, we were down the road from Robert Johnson's grave, which already is like,
It was wild. So we pull up, it's dark as hell.
There's no lights anywhere.
There's no lights. And then I believe Lynn said that if she got murdered, she was going to blame me. And I take full responsibility because what the hell. So then we go inside, and there's a shared room with 2 beds. So the way that it was set up was like you walked in, and it was like a living room, and then you'd walk in more, and then there was a separate like room that split off. So it was a bedroom with 2 beds, and then there was a bathroom. And then if you went to the other side, you went around, and there was the kitchen. Mm-hmm. So we shared the room. And at one point in the middle of the night, we heard like a scratching sound on the roof. And Lynn just gets up, and she's like, did you hear that? And I was just like in total denial.
The walls, too. Yeah. It was like the roof and the walls. Like...
I was in total denial. I'm that kind of person. I'm in total denial. So I was just like, Lynn, it's okay. I think it's just a raccoon trying to open something. And she was like, okay. And then it happened again. Yeah. And she was like, do you want to come sleep next to me? I was like, that sounds like a really great idea. So I fucking ran my ass to her bed, and we just like
under the covers, both of us.
We were just like, so it was, oh my God. And then at some point we fell asleep because her and I were just looking at each other like, this motherfucking place is haunted. And you
remember the old creepy piano too? It had like a creepy old piano.
Yes, it was like there was dust. There was a lot of dust, and it was the creepy piano. And so the next morning, thank God it was just one night.
Yes.
The next morning, we like get ready to leave, and then we noticed the binder on the coffee table. Mm-hmm. Guys, that's the cabin where the blues musician had passed away.
Yeah, where Robert Johnson died. Because apparently the place was like, they had taken the old slave quarters, the old, workers' cabins, quote unquote, and moved them to this site to like as a hotel or whatever. And so that was supposedly the one where he died. And it was like, oh boy.
So we're reading this after the fact, and it was just like, yeah, we were right. This shit is haunted. Thank God we're leaving. And then I think at one point Lynn and I were like, we got to do something to like
cleansing.
We gotta cleanse. We gotta get some of the things.
So we don't take nobody home with us. We gotta,
I don't remember. Did you leave tobacco? I think you might have sprinkled.
I left tobacco actually at the Mississippi Mounds at where the native.
That's right.
Yeah, and actually there was a really great article that I wrote about that place that you got mentioned in. Did you know that?
That's right.
Yes.
Oh, because my God. Okay, so tell them what happened.
Another fun story from our Mississippi trip was that so the Mississippi Mounds Trail is the remnants of like indigenous cities, indigenous villages in that area in the Southeast. And a lot of the trail runs alongside the Blues Trail, so along the Mississippi River. So we stopped along the Mississippi, at one of the stops along the Mississippi Mounds Trail. And what the Mississippi Mounds Trail is it's the remnants of like indigenous villages and towns from pre-colonialization. Well, actually, I think it was like right at the same time. Like a lot of them were flattened to make room for plantations. So,
which is so upsetting.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I wrote the article about. But so we got there, and there were two guys outside smoking a cigarette, and Mel stopped to ask them for a cigarette because she was trying to quit smoking.
Yeah, I know. I was trying. And also, she was using all my tobacco for offerings.
Yeah, right.
She was like, can I get another one? And I was like, well, I can't say no. All right, here.
So, but we went in and we walked around, and we actually got like a tour. Like the guy, there's nobody else there. So the people that were standing outside smoking were actually like one of the people that was like working there, and then somebody that was part of the organization that like kept the places. And so we had this great conversation, and we got like a private tour, and then we walked around outside.
I tried to take a picture of the mounds, and that was the only time my camera didn't work. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
And you were just like, well,
yeah.
It's like, they don't want you taking pictures. I said, all right.
Yeah. And so I actually left. That was when I took a cigarette from you and left an offering.
Yes.
For the mounds, just because like I was so kind of struck as somebody that has both Native and Black ancestry. Like it was just, I got really struck by the place and kind of hearing what happened to a lot of the villages and that kind of thing. But then what was really cool was a week or two after we came back, I got an email that someone had come to do a ceremony on top of the mound that I had left the offering at. And like, no one had been there from the tribe for like hundreds of years. And for some reason, this guy just had a feeling like he needed to do the ceremony there. It was like an elder, and drove from Oklahoma, because it was one of the tribes that had been removed during the Trail of Tears, drove from Oklahoma to do the ceremony on top of that mound. And I got the email because they were like, it's so rare for somebody to come that knows what they're talking about and what they're doing, and they had remembered us, and that they found that was like an interesting thing. I don't think they knew that I had actually left an offering.
No. At that point, they had stayed inside the building, and then we went
walking around.
Yeah. And then I stood back and I just let her do her thing.
Yeah.
And I was just like, yeah. It was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was also sad. Like it's just
the history.
That was the thing that like fucked with me so heavy, and I'm sure it messed with you too, because we both had moments where like we would just be quiet, because it's like you look at these beautiful structures, or you see the amazing things that either people had built or like contributed, and then to understand that there's also a pain and a suffering behind that is just like it's overwhelming.
Yeah. And I think especially like where like most people don't know anything about the Mississippi Mountains, right?
Yeah.
People don't even, there's a lot of indigenous history that I tell people about, and they're like, what? Like, oh, there were people in the Southeast? Yeah, man, there were people everywhere, So it's just like that kind of thing. It's really, that's part of what my work is, though, is to try to like write about stuff like that. And I did write an article about that for Sierra Magazine, and like write about stuff like that so people know about it, so that you know about the history, so that you know that you can still go there and support the place. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I would love to see people go there and like have them be able to, preserve it and do more around the museum and talking about the history,
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of the idea of what I do, But then I also sometimes get to go to fun places like the Caribbean.
I know. So. She had like pictures of her like. I thought she was vacationing. It was a work trip, it looked like a vacation, and I was just like, well, all right, must be nice.
Yeah, it's funny. It's a great. I actually really dig the job though, because it's a good balance. Because I do stuff like the Mississippi Blues Trail, where it's like, and I did all through the South. So I did like Alabama, I did like Birmingham and all of that, Birmingham was intense. Like it's amazing, and I think that people should go, but it's just the history of the civil rights.
Is that where the museum is with this? Is that the museum with the statues?
No, that's in Montgomery.
Okay.
But Birmingham is the one with the church where the little girls were killed. Yeah, and like all of that, like just the history of the civil rights movement in Alabama, all across the South, but like that place in particular, I think kind of got to me, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like I go places like that, and then I try to balance it out by going places like that are a little bit more fun. But then I feel like just because of who I am, you know, so I'm in the Cayman Islands, and I ended up talking to this woman who was like an indigenous, well, I think she was also Black and indigenous, but like was talking about how nobody knows about the people that were there originally. Everyone knows about the Cayman Island as a tax haven, and, you know, they don't know the history of the island or the people that were there. And, you know, she was getting real emotional and I was getting real emotional. So it's like, you know, it's interesting because I feel like that everywhere that you go, there's there's like stories that are told and then people's stories that are not told. And so that's kind of, yeah.
Absolutely. Because it's just like when the land is just bought up and then you completely just displace
right.
a whole entire like group of people.
Right.
You then displace the culture.
Yep. And their history. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just like, you're walking around fucking, God only know, at a tourist shop, and like, that could have been like, somebody could have lived there, or like, was like a medicinal person, or like, this is where they held like rituals, or like, had like, I don't know, fun parties.
Yeah.
I say parties, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. But all of that though, right? Like, there's like, because I think that at this point, it's like so much stuff has gotten displaced that it's like people are like, okay, I just want to keep this thing. I just want to keep this religious sacred thing, right?
Yeah.
But like, wouldn't it be nice to be able to just keep your culture in general? To not have it be something that you have to like pick and choose what you want to keep, that, you know, so that other people don't take it. Like it's I don't know, it's an interesting thing. So that's the thing. That's what I like to talk about, the history, and give people, you know, a sense of like what other people are doing and what's important to them, and, you know, why other people's histories and cultures and beliefs and all of that are like important to humanity and important to, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
That's why Juneteenth is super important.
Yeah.
It's a big day.
Yeah. And that's like, so that the history of Juneteenth was something that I think was largely in the African American community until really recently. And so now I think there's like cities all across the US now celebrating it. There's like some controversies about it because it's that thing of like, okay, it's great to do it, but can we still keep the meaning of it? Or is it going to become like a t-shirt, you know, like, oh, happy Juneteenth, and, you know, lose the meaning.
Yeah, like commercializing it like they do everything else.
Yeah, exactly. So there's like some concern about that. And there's also a lot of concern around like, so you make it a federal holiday, but then like a federal holiday means that sort of certain people get the days off, but like, do the majority of African Americans still get the day off? Or are people working in jobs where you don't get like government holidays? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a thing too, where it's like, okay, we've made Juneteenth a great holiday for upper middle class, mostly white folks to get off. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, it's great, like that it's a holiday, but also like, what can we do to make sure that the people whose holiday it is get it off, get some kind of recognition that it's still something that is like helpful or celebratory to the community, rather than just like another commercialized holiday.
Absolutely.
So that's like,
hell yeah. Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I know, because I've heard, you know, there were some people that were saying like, on Juneteenth, you should just pay everybody. Pay everybody for the shift.
Yeah.
Like, just all African Americans, all Black people, just pay them on Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Like, you get the day off and you get paid.
Extra money, right?
like that's the least you could do.
Yeah.
Were you the one that told me, because you just said reparations, were you the one that told me about Cumberbatch?
Oh, I don't know if I was, but yeah, the story with him is that his family were slave owners, right? In the Caribbean, was it?
I don't remember exactly where. I think his grandmother or somebody was trying to get him to change his last name for his stage name because it's a very specific last name. Yeah. It turns out, I think, they had a lot of
they
money.
were
like they were a big plantation.
Yeah. And I think it was in the Caribbean somewhere.
I think they might have actually gotten compensated as well. I think they might have been part of the group that got compensated.
Like in Jamaica?
I'm not sure specifics.
Yeah, I don't remember what.
But I know that there
from,
were plantation owners
Yeah.
that did get compensated when they weren't allowed to have slaves anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like
There's some
his
crazy
family
stories
was
about that.
part of that because he
Possibly.
had such a huge. It was like
Probably.
a ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't even remember.
I mean, it happened in the U.S. A lot of the slave owners in the U.S. got compensation, which is interesting because the enslaved people didn't get compensation, but a lot of the slave owners got compensation for loss of property.
So wild to me.
Yeah. And in Haiti also, like Haiti, part of why Haiti is struggling financially even today is because, so there was a revolution in Haiti where the enslaved people were like, you know, fuck this, basically, like get out, and, you know, took over the island. And then when they established a new government, they were forced to pay France basically for their freedom, for the loss of the island.
I didn't realize. I knew about the rebellion, but I didn't know that they had to pay.
Yeah, they paid France. And so then it's like, well, you have a new nation, right, that is like struggling, and then you're going to make them pay. Yeah. Right, so they forced poverty on Haiti, yeah. And so there's a big conversation about whether or not France should pay that money back, especially after the earthquake that hit Haiti, you know, years ago, and they've been really struggling since then. So there's been conversation around that too. I don't know if it's come to anything, but I know that's been a discussion. Because, like, can you imagine?
It's always a discussion. It's
like,
where's the money?
When is it actually going to happen?
Where's the money? There's a lot of people owed money right now.
Right, yeah. And even, like, there are ways to do reparations also that are not just, like, here's cash money, right? Like, there's, you know, places that are, I mean, cash money is good, and people need cash money, right? Yeah. But also, like, things like housing. Like, housing has been a huge thing where, you know, there's a disproportionate amount of people of color, particularly African Americans, that don't own their homes, right? Yeah. When they do own their homes, they are subject to, you know, predatory lending, to like, what is it, the reverse mortgages and things like that end up taking homes from people. Yeah. And then that means that it doesn't get passed down in the family, and then you don't get generational wealth, right? So there's like all kinds of stuff like that like if there were some kind of legislation to fix that, to repay people for those things, then like that would help. You know, there's like ways, tax breaks, there's all sorts of things that could be done. But we're like, you know, we're having arguments right now about whether or not we should even teach history to kids, right? So like, we're
the book ban.
Yeah, right.
And here's the thing. I don't know if you know, but there's like controversy happening because like some people are like, the books are not banned, but I'm like, what do you mean they're not banned? There are some people saying the books are not banned in like the schools and stuff like that. And I'm just like, what do you mean the books aren't banned? Like, it's a whole like thing where the kids aren't, because what is it, K through 6?
K through 12.
Oh, K through 12?
Oh, in Florida, you mean?
Yeah.
I think it is K through 6.
For critical race theory?
Yeah.
And
I think it is K through 12 for critical race theory. Which is its whole, like, that's a whole, first of all.
Yeah.
No one is teaching your K through 12 kids critical race theory. Critical race theory is a college sociology theory, right? It is a sociological thing that they are teaching sociology students in university. They're not teaching your K through 12 kids critical race theory. That's first of all. Like, it irritates the crap out of me because it's like, that's not what it is. Like, what they're doing is they're keeping basic history, Black history, history of people of color from students in your K through 12. So, for example, the idea of Juneteenth is, you know, critical race theory according to...
So they're just lumping it all...
Yeah, they're calling any basically any history that focuses on certain communities, marginalized communities, and actually talks about racism and marginalization, they're calling critical race theory. But it's not, it's history. It's history. It's literally just history of folks of color. Like, that's all it is. Critical race theory, the actual critical race theory, is taught in sociology and law in undergrad. It was Kimberly Crenshaw, I think, that coined critical race theory, who's a professor she's at Columbia, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I saw an interview, and I don't know if that was her or not, but it might have been her talking with with two parents. It was like I'll get back to you on
Yeah.
But I thought I saw something on it because, like, whoever it was, I feel like it was her because she was explaining it so beautifully and flawlessly. I was like, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things though. It's like people take certain words and they use them, and this is, as a writer, like, it's a thing, right? You take words, you use them in this way that demonizes something when it's like that's not what's happening. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just it's a mess. It's a mess. But anyway, back to Juneteenth. We could do this all day.
I could.
This is what I talk about. This is what I write about. So I could do this all day. But Juneteenth, yes. So we talked about the controversies about Juneteenth, or the thoughts about, like, the concerns about what's happening.
Yeah.
But I think it's good. I mean, I will say that I think it's great because I've written, like, I wrote an article. My first article that I wrote about Juneteenth was, like, a while ago. It was for JSTOR, which is, like, a research platform. And lately, though, people have been calling me and asking me to write about Juneteenth. I just did something for Wanderlust, which is a British magazine, which I thought was really cool. And so, like, it's something that, like, the knowledge of it is spreading, and I think that that's good. Like, for example, I wrote that article about Wanderlust, and one of the things that I said in terms of, like, how do you celebrate this if you don't live in the U.S. was, like, well, who are the marginalized people in your community? And what is their story? Like, finding that out is a way to then celebrate, you know, even if you don't live in the U.S., you know? Because there's always, like I said, there's always someone's story that you don't know. And it's important to the larger kind of context of history to, like, know these things, I think. And also, like, just to interacting with each other, you know? Like, it's important stuff. Yeah.
I agree. It's just like, I'm like, my brain goes into, like, a million different
I
directions
know.
when we have this kind of conversation.
Me too, yeah.
Because it is.
It's
in,
like,
so many different categories of life, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I guess, like, that's the thing that, like, I think is, like, frustrating. Like, so, like, okay, talking about critical race theory, right? It's history. It's just history. It's literally just history, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, like, historically, we have not taught everybody's history, and now we're trying to, because there's a bunch of us here, and we all have different histories, and we all have different, like, things that happen that are important,
and they all, like,
and they all intersect, and they're all important, right? Like, I don't understand why, like, okay, if we're talking about the Civil War, why would you not talk about Juneteenth, right? Mm-hmm. Simple. It's the same story. You know, it's the same story. It's just also adding on the perspective of the people who were enslaved, which, like, duh, right?
Yeah.
I just think stuff like that it's, like, frustrating that it has become, like, this controversial, like, argument, you know? It's like, why are we stressing out about teaching people history, you know?
Because we don't want to hurt people's feelings.
But, like...
and make people uncomfortable.
But, like, it's uncomfortable. History is uncomfortable, right? Like, history is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Everywhere, really. You know, history is always uncomfortable. So, like, does that mean we don't teach history at all? We only cherry pick the stuff that makes us feel good about ourselves. We don't actually teach kids what's actually going on or what has actually happened. That doesn't make any sense, you know?
Yeah.
What's that? There's that old thing, you know, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, you know?
Yeah,
like,
I was thinking that same
yeah,
thing.
like, that's the thing. Like, you have to learn things about, you have to learn what you've done wrong in order to do better.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, I don't understand the idea of, like, oh, well, we don't want to learn about it because it's going to make me uncomfortable. Like, you know? Like,
I'm, like, triple blanking right now because I'm like, yeah.
Shit's uncomfortable, man. like,
yeah. But accountability is necessary for healing.
Right, yeah.
And for change.
Right.
Like, not just, like, I'm sorry. It's like, no, like, real
how do we fix
change.
This? Yeah, how do we fix this? How do we not continue to do this? Right. Like, that's the thing, you know? And you know, you get into this issue of, like, so are the people who are against history, and I make a point of saying that instead of being like critical race theory, history. What you're against is history, right? Like, you're not against critical race theory because nobody's teaching your kid critical race theory. You are mad about history being taught.
Yeah.
Are you mad about history being taught because you don't think your kids should know about people that don't look like them?
Oof.
And that's a question, right? Like, because that's what ends up happening, right? If you don't teach kids about Juneteenth, about indigenous people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Then they, you know, I remember my little brother, I have 2 little brothers and they're much younger than me. So I was like a teenager doing all my Native activism stuff when my little brother was like kindergarten or something, 1st grade. And he, for like Thanksgiving, they were like doing some kind of show and tell. And he was like, oh, I want to bring in my sister because my sister is Native American, right?
Oh,
and
God.
the teacher told him, your sister can't be Native American. They're all dead.
What?
Yeah. And this is in New York City, right? Like,
You're kidding.
Right. And so it's like
that is not
like
where
that.
I thought the story was headed. I thought you were gonna say I thought this was gonna be a lot lighter.
Yeah, I know.
No,
but like that kind of thing, right? Like that's what happens when you don't teach people history.
They say stupid shit. Oh
right.
My God.
And like the teacher maybe genuinely believes that, right? Like there were, now I think it's better, but for a very long time there were a lot of people that believed that. Like when I did protests, people would be like, alleged descendants of Native Americans, like as though you made it up. Like it was a pervasive thing, right? Now I think it's better. I think especially with like the water protectors and things like that, it's kind of come into the, you know, mainstream thought process better. But yeah. So like, but that's what happens. Do you know what I mean? That's what happens when you don't teach kids histories. They grow up to be teachers that then teach other kids crazy stuff. And it's, you know, it's a mess. It's better to just teach everything, you know, and have that conversation. If it's uncomfortable, like, let's talk about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I feel like that's just across the board. Like the second someone is uncomfortable, they're like, I don't want to talk about it. That's why sexual education is also shit.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, because nobody wants to talk about the things, and then you end up sending this person out into the world.
Right. Yeah.
And then they meet different people
and they don't know what to do,
and the whole world is just rocked, like like depending on the foundation, right? Depending, and I'm gonna say if you did a good job or not, like when they meet different people, I feel like you're either going to be like, some people get angry, right? Mm-hmm. Some people get very passionate about, like, I don't understand this, like their whole brain just kind of just goes haywire. But then you have like others that are like curious and are just like, oh, okay, so you're different. Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Okay, cool. And then they'll ask questions, and sometimes it can come off like because you don't know any better, which is why it's good to to meet people and to learn what's okay and what's not okay to say.
Well, but even that, like, so one of the things that I always tell people with stuff like that is like, I've had issues where I had a friend that was like my first trans friend, right? Mm-hmm. And I said some dumb stuff to her, right? But we had already established a friendship. So when I say dumb things, she was like, how's that leather taste when you put your foot in your mouth? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, she was like, yeah, no. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Is that my foot? I'm sorry. You know what I mean? Yeah. And we were good, right? It's like you treat people with respect. You are genuine with someone, and then when you put your foot in it, because you're going to, there's no way, like, there's too many, my theory is this, there are too many people, there's too many things to know. There's no way that you can go through life and never make a mistake and never say anything stupid or ever say anything offensive to somebody. Yeah. The question is, does the person know you well enough? Like, did you establish enough of a respect and a rapport with that person that they know that you just had a dumb moment rather than are a dumb person, right? And B, how do you take your foot out of your mouth, right? Yeah. Do you get defensive? Do you know what I mean? Or are you like, oh, my bad, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was well, you know, and then do better the next time, right?
Yeah.
Like,
because we've definitely had conversations where like there were things that I was ignorant about, and then you were like, ouch, hey. Right. And I was like, oh shit, I didn't know that was like offensive. I didn't know that was a thing. Right.
Yeah. Everybody does that. Like,
and then you apologize. Yeah. And then you do not do it again. Right. Like, you just take accountability. Right. And you continue moving forward, because if these are your people, if
Right.
this is your friend, like,
Yeah.
why would you
or your
continue-
colleague or your, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
Like, that's
you're
the
right.
thing.
You're right.
Like, anyone, and that's, like, ideally, you have a diverse group of friends. And I always tell people, like, if you don't have a diverse group of friends, you should really ask yourself why. Well, seriously, because
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, I went to undergrad in Boulder, Colorado, which is a very liberal place, but also very white in terms of there's not a lot of diversity in Boulder. And people like would say the most just off the wall things, right? To me. But like when you're like, what? And they're like, oh, I'm sorry. Like then you can kind of work through it. But when it's like,
when they say something and then they're 10 toes down
how
on it.
dare you call me? You're saying I'm racist. How could you possibly call me racist? And you're like, but you just said this thing. You said
Exactly.
this racist thing, right?
Yes.
And it's like you have to be able to be like, oh, I'm sorry. That's my bad. I didn't know. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, everybody does that. It's just. Yeah, you just gotta. I don't know. I don't know why some people get so defensive about it or so tense about it. I grew up in New York though, so like I think when you grow up in New York, you're used to a bunch of different people.
Yeah.
And I don't know, you get more of a sense of like, oh, okay, I can't do this with this person. I can't. You learn how to deal with other people. Whereas I think if you grow up in a place where everybody looks like you, it's hard to like. You never get the gist of the knack for like, how do I deal with somebody that's very different? How do I acknowledge that I don't know something about a group of people? Because that's another thing, right? Because sometimes you don't know, and that's okay to be like, oh, I didn't know that, rather than, well, my black friend said, like, like, don't do that, don't do that,
That's terrifying to me. I'm not even gonna lie. That's really terrifying to me.
Yeah, it was interesting, my undergrad experience.
I bet.
It was very interesting.
Like,
and I went to hippie school, so I can't imagine, like, if you went to, yeah.
No, I could not imagine. Like, if Dom was here, like, even Dom, as light-skinned as Dom is, because of her curly hair, she's had people, like, step up to her and grab her hair.
Yeah.
Like, we were talking about it last episode because I was just like, it drives me nuts because I'm like, I'm not even black. Like, you know what I mean? But I'm like, why are you touching people?
Yeah.
Like, just simply, why are you touching people?
Yeah.
That you don't know?
That you don't know. Yeah. Without even asking. It's not even like, oh, like, your hair is cool. Can I, like,
That's still weird to me, though.
It is weird, but it's at least, to me, it's like, there are levels of weird, right? So that's a little weird, but like, at least you've started a conversation. And if the person's like, no, then you're like, oh, my bad. Your hair looks cool. I'm going about my business, right? Like, but if you just like, when I was at school, I had a woman lean over a table like this, both hands in my hair, and was like, oh my God, your hair is so amazing. Why do all black people not wear their hair like this? And I was like, wow, okay. Like, no. So like, don't do that. Don't do that. Like, if
when you say that, I just don't know how to respond.
I didn't know how to respond either. I just sort of leaned back and looked at her kind of crazy.
I mean, yeah. I mean, also in New York, I feel like you get punched.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like in New York, you know better because people would be like, "What?"
And then you get hit.
Right, right.
Oh my.
But like
God,
even like that kind of thing of like coming over to somebody and being like, "Oh, your hair is cool," is like, that's fine. You can say that, and then I could be like, "Oh, thanks," and we can start a conversation. Like, just it's about like, I don't know, respect, I guess. There's a certain level of like respect that I think that is missing. Like where, I'm not a petting zoo. Don't pet me. Don't like,
yeah.
I am a human. Speak to me like a human.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll let you touch my hair if you speak to me. You know what I mean? Like, cause it's fine. Like if I'm in the middle of, Colorado and you've never seen a black person and my hair is interesting. Okay, cool. But like say, oh, your hair is interesting. I've never seen someone's hair like that before. And then we can have a discussion about it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then that would have been a cooler discussion because I could have said, well, actually my hair is not like typical because my dad is blah, 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 blah. And then it would have been a cool conversation to have, you know, like.
But instead, you put your nasty, grubby hands that we don't even know if you washed your hands in
my hair. Yeah. So it's just like, it's about like respect, like just having respect for each other and like learning about each other, you know, just being open to learning about each other.
Yeah,
you know?
1000%. And you're going to make mistakes along the way, but take accountability and make the adjustments and then move accordingly.
Yeah. And it's okay. Like, it's okay to be like, oops, my bad. You know, like, sometimes it's actually helps. Like, when you're like, oh, sorry, that was, being dumb. Like, you know? And then people are like, oh, well.
And it also makes you more, like, thoughtful. It makes you really think before, like, you speak or before you just, like, before an interaction. It just makes you more thoughtful.
Yeah.
To just, like, hey, let me just take a moment and really is this something that's appropriate to say?
Right.
You know, and I'm just like, because right now, I'm like in my head this whole conversation because I'm like, I want to be respectful and I want like you to pretty much take the lead on this conversation. And so I'm like, yep. Yep.
No, but you're supposed to be interviewing me.
I know, I am. No, but you're just saying all the things that I had all the questions for. So I'm just like, well, if I don't have to ask the questions now because, you know, you're answering all the things, which is brilliant.
Great.
Because she's brilliant.
Aw.
Yeah. So I want to play a Would You Rather.
Okay.
With you.
All right.
And let's see. Okay, here we go. I have 2. Okay. Right. Now, she's done quite the bit of traveling. Mm-hmm. She's been in the Amazon, right? Have you done that?
Not yet. That's on my list. I was in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica.
Yeah, I was on the Caribbean in the jungle in Costa Rica is what you're thinking
She went to the jungle.
Yeah, not the side of Costa Rica that everybody goes to as tourists, the other side or as volunteering. Yeah, I was like out in the jungle. It was fun.
It's terrifying. That's why it's her job.
Yes.
So here it is. Would you rather wake up one morning to find yourself covered in ticks or find yourself covered in leeches after wading through a river?
Oh, man.
Right? When I saw this question, I was like, with her outdoorsy self, I was like, I gotta see. Because I already know my answer.
So I would say, oh God, neither. Leeches because ticks carry more diseases.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. If I have to be covered in bloodsuckers, I would rather get the bloodsuckers off and then not have to deal with anything else. So yeah, I would take leeches over ticks.
I picked the same, but I forgot about the whole diseases part.
Yeah.
Thank God I made that
Lyme
decision.
disease, yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, I was thinking leeches because I'm like, I feel like leeches would be easier to take
to pull
out.
off that too. Yeah.
Than ticks because then you got to sit there and you got to stare and they're really, really tiny.
Yeah,
and leeches, I feel like you can also see a lot better.
Yeah, I think ticks also like bury their faces in your skin.
So you got to make sure you got to pull the whole thing out.
Yeah. No, none of that. I would take the leeches. Leeches any day.
Did you ever have any leeches or any like bug stories? I don't think I've ever asked you if you had any bug stories.
I've got a lot of bug stories. My favorite bug story is my boyfriend at the time they used to call him the Mountain Man. And it was just like, you know, bears, not a problem, like out in the wilderness, not a problem. And we were in Costa Rica out in the jungle and there was like it was basically a roach. It was a giant palmetto bug, right? And he goes to it was on the bed and I was like, ugh, get off my bed. So he goes to swipe it off and it flies. So it jumps up. And I had never heard this man scream. He screamed like I can't even describe the scream. And I just burst into hysterical laughter. Because I'm like, of all of the things, this man was like catching poisonous snakes with his bare hands to arrange them artfully and take photos. But the palmetto bug is the thing that makes you scream.
Listen, it is like you never know. You never know. I know. My cousin, she said she can't deal with bugs or dead bugs. There's some people that can't.
Bugs?
Yes, there's some people can't even deal with dead bugs.
So my last roommate, Shab, our friend Shabnam, I was the official bug killer because I don't like to kill them. I like to catch them and take them out. But she was just like, no, get that away from me. I was like, the husband. She was like, come get this bug. It was hilarious. I'm not scared of bugs. I'm really not scared of animals. For a long time, I was terrified of bees. And then I got stung by a bee a couple years ago. And it was on my birthday. It was 2022, I think. It was recent. Oh. And they thought I was allergic because I was hyperventilating, but I was just scared.
Oh my God.
I finally got the stinger out, and I was like, oh, okay. I'm okay now. So now I feel like I'm less scared of bees because I've been stung. I know I'm not allergic. It doesn't hurt. It hurts, but it's like, oh, okay, Yeah. But previously, I was like so scared that I almost climbed off a balcony away from a bee once. Like,
nope.
Yeah. So
I can't.
Yeah. Meanwhile, bears, no problem. I could take a bear.
And Carlton, what did that? Yeah. One of these, I still haven't told them the story with Carlton and his bear story because I want him to tell his bear story. But I'm like, what is it with you guys and these wild animals?
Wild animals. You had another one?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I have.
These are fun.
Would you rather eat pasta with ketchup or carrots with Nutella?
Oh, no.
Because she's also a foodie.
Oh, no. Oh, both of those are awful.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to spice the ketchup, or is it just ketchup out of the bottle?
That is a really good question. It's not specified. So I'm going to have to say no. It's just ketchup and pasta. I would still take the ketchup and pasta, honestly. Nutella and carrots?
I don't know.
I don't know if I could do that, man. I don't know if I could.
That's a hard one. That's a really difficult one. I'm actually leaning towards the Nutella and carrots.
Stop it. Why?
Because like ketchup on pasta is just disgusting and wrong. It's no. Like if I could spice, like I feel like I could make a ketchup into a passable tomato sauce for a pasta, but just ketchup, just like Heinz, I just even thinking about that makes me like, ugh. Whereas Nutella and carrots is like, I don't like carrots and I don't like Nutella, but I feel like I could, it makes me like less, ugh.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
It's just like,
that's fair.
It would not be taste. It would be okay.
I'm just thinking about like just taking the carrot and just like smearing it into the.
Yeah. It's like, it would be like chocolate covered carrots, which sounds weird, but doesn't sound awful.
Okay, it doesn't sound awful. It doesn't. But yeah, I'm just like,
because Nutella is basically like a nutty chocolate, like a hazelnut.
I'm just thinking about like the texture.
Yeah, it
of
would be
the carrot.
Weird. Yeah, it would be weird. It would be weird,
but you'd still take that over the ketchup.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
Are we gonna do
We're going to do Yeah, we are going to move on to our Am I the Asshole? Am I the asshole for refusing to bring food to someone else's barbecue that I got invited to? Here we go. Mm-hmm. I, 29 male, and my fiance, 28 female, were invited to a friend's barbecue last week. This isn't the first time we've been invited. This is the third. The first 2 times, let's call her Lexi. Lexi rang my fiance and said, just bring some food for the barbecue. Okay, cool, I thought. Bring some burgers, sausages, nothing too fancy. So we turn up, and Lexi and her family, so it's Lexi, her 2 daughters, and a partner, are all there. The barbecue fired up, but there's nothing on it. So it turns out I was the one supplying the food for everyone as they were hosting. Oh. I don't think this is normal, not from my upbringing anyway. I did have enough food to go around. It wasn't an incredible barbecue, though. So the second time, same conversation. This time I took a little bit less as we got back from lunch a couple hours prior to the event, and it was slightly last minute. They all looked disappointed I hadn't taken as much food as previously. Not really my problem, and I only had 1 burger so they could have more food between them. Here's my biggest problem. Last week, the usual happens, so we go to the barbecue. However, I refused to bring any food as I genuinely believed that they should at least put some crisps out or something. I know they are hosting, but surely this isn't normal. Upon them all discovering I didn't bring any food, the atmosphere changed and Lexi suggested we go to the shop to pick some stuff up. I said, no problem. I'll drive and come with you. We get the food, which she has picked out all the expensive meats, rolls, crisps, etc. When we arrive at the till to buy the items, she looks at me to pay. I refused. My car journey back to their house was awkward, and I left with my partner immediately. My fiance thinks I was right, but also could have bitten the bullet and then just said we're busy for any future invites. I disagree and believe I did the right thing by informing them that this isn't a normal culture. Not for me anyways. So, am I the asshole for how I acted? They're from London. They're from London, for context on the area.
So here's the thing. I don't think that
Your face, I saw it from the side of my eye.
So first of all, we'll talk about culture, right? Like, you do not show up to somebody's house without food. Brown people, I think you always show up with something, right?
Yeah.
However, you also don't throw a barbecue with no food. That's weird. So to me, I feel like I don't think the person is the asshole, but I do think I would have said, like, the second time I got invited, I'd have been like, I'm not bringing all the food, am I? Like, you know what I mean? Because then I think you would have had the conversation. Like, the slightly asshole thing is the end where it's like, you knew she wanted you to pay for it. And I'm assuming that you didn't tell her no until you got up to the register. That's a little bit of an asshole thing. But I also think it's an asshole thing to just expect someone else to bring all the food to your barbecue for your whole family. Like, that's weird too. That's kind of, yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I would have, so it's interesting. Like, I'm not going to say I'm confrontational, but I'm the type of person that likes to talk about something. So, like, the first time that happened, I probably would have let it slide. The second time I would have said, I'm not bringing all the food, am I? You know? And then given them the opportunity to be like, well, yeah. And then I'd have been like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. No, you know?
Yeah.
And then it would have, like, nipped it in the bud. They either would have disinvited me or they'd have gotten some food of their own. You know what I mean? Like, I would have brought the same amount of food, like, where it was like, I'm going to bring slightly less food because I've told you that I'm not bringing all the food. You know what I mean? Yeah. I would have done the same thing that he did, but I think I would have communicated more. So I don't know if he's an asshole, but, like, or they are an asshole, but I think both people are kind of assholes in that situation.
It's just so weird.
That's very weird.
I don't understand. It just
because even a potluck, you make a dish and other people bring additional dishes.
I'm just sitting here thinking about the fact that the grill was on and then nothing
on it.
The thing.
Right.
And they're just sitting there waiting for them to pull up for the food. I'm like,
and their friends are not even family. Like, you know what I mean? Like, obviously they're not close enough that you'd be like, hey, because, like, I feel like you and I are close enough that if I didn't have any food and I was throwing a barbecue, I'd be like, could you get some food? Because we ain't got no food here. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But, like, it sounds like they're not that close.
Nope.
So
there was no indication that they were close at all.
That's weird.
He said my fiance's friend.
Yeah, that's weird. That's weird.
It is weird.
That's weird.
I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of about the petty. Like, I don't have it in me to be petty, but I'm here for it. Because I think he was testing them to just be like, there's no fucking way you're going to make me pay for the third time in a row to feed everybody.
I would have just been like, nope, I'm not going to do it the second time. Like, I'd have been like, I'm bringing 4 burgers. You know, like, that's all we got in the fridge. Like, nope.
I can't, but, like, when I was reading this, insane. I was like, there's no fucking way this is real.
I also don't think I would have driven them to the grocery store. I'd have been like, well, you got to go to the grocery store then. You know,
we'll be here.
Yeah, we'll be here talking. It's weird though. I also think it's a weird thing. There's a thing around food. So, like, I learned that, like, so to me, if you say a potluck, like, you bring food, right?
Yeah.
Or alcohol.
Yeah.
Right? People will show up with, like, chips. And I'm like, what? So there is a cultural thing around, like, I think some people, like, you have to make food, you have to bring, like, food to other people's houses if there's a party, and then but not everybody feels that way, you know?
Here's the thing. If I'm inviting you to my house and I'm saying, hey, bring food, I have to plan the menu. Right. So what are you going to bring?
Yeah, exactly. What are you bringing? Right. Yeah, exactly. That's
because
what I would
I'm
ask.
making this and this and this.
Right.
Who's making the other thing?
Yeah.
You know? Like,
and I would specifically be like, hey, can you bring X?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, if I'm asking you to bring burgers, I'd be like, hey, can you bring burgers? We've got corn. Can you bring sausages or something like that. You would give them something specific to bring. You wouldn't just be like, bring the food.
Like, it's just weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, it's weird. That's weird. Like I said, I think a lot of the Am I the Assholes are like a communication thing, right? Where it's like, if you're like, we don't have any money, we want to see you, but we don't have any money, can you bring the food over? Would be
that's so
a whole
much
other situation.
Better.
Yeah, like that's a different situation. But just expecting someone to bring all the food.
But then why
weird.
you just call? It just seemed like they just calling whenever they're hungry and they want a
yeah,
barbecue.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's not cool. That's not cool. You gotta ask. This actually brings us back to our other conversation about respecting other people, right? Like
yes.
You can't make assumptions. You have to respect other people. You gotta call and say, hey, we want to have a barbecue. We don't have any food. Could you bring some over?
Jesus Christ.
I mean,
Holy shit.
if you called me and said that, I'd be like, yeah, I'll bring some food, sure.
Like, I remember you had me, hold on. Yeah, didn't we pick you up because you were getting ready to lug a whole ass pot of fucking gumbo?
Yeah. I also cook like that. I love
She
feeding
had
people.
a big, like this
Like a
big, and
big
she was
pot of
just
gumbo.
like, Shop wants gumbo. And so I made it. And it was this big pot. And it was just
Huge
like,
pot.
how the hell are you going to get on the train? Like, it was just like, it was this whole thing. But
Yeah.
That's Lynn. She'll bring it.
I'll feed you. That's the moral of the story is if you
Or
need
she'll
food-
bring a nice big bottle of Prosecco.
Yes, I will either feed you or get you drunk. Or both.
It's nice. So let's do one more Am I the Asshole?
One more,
because,
okay.
We get a double feature. So
This is the other one you were asking about?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
I'm very excited about it. All right, here we go. This one's a little spicy. Am I the asshole for not using my husband's hilarious gift?
Uh-oh.
So, husband, 29, and I, 26, have been married for 4 years. I had a great job in sales before COVID, but we found during the pandemic that things worked better when husband was at work and I was at home. He earns enough to support us both. I never thought I'd end up being a traditional wife, but given that he's the breadwinner, I sometimes feel as though I should pick up a lot of the slack at home. I'm not a great cook, but I'm sociable and enjoy being the hostess. When H has friends over to watch soccer, I prep a huge tray of snacks, keep the beers on ice, and pop in with drinks and food to top them off during the game. I don't stay to watch, but I do ask the guys how they're doing, etc. Just polite chit-chat. They all seemed into it and often comment that H has done well to have such a great wife. It's a nice setup. Last week, H came home with a beautifully gift-wrapped box and said he'd got me a little something to wear when his friends are over. I do my best to dress nicely when they're around, so I figured it would be a pretty dress or something. He had this huge grin on his face, so I was so excited. I opened the box to find a red latex mini dress
Oh my gosh.
and a ball gag. The gag was designed to look like a soccer ball, and the dress is in his team's colors. I didn't know what to say at first. I was so confused. He's never been into anything like that. He's very vanilla. I asked
Apparently
him,
not.
I asked if it was a joke, and at first he said no and told me his friends wouldn't believe how lucky he was if I walked in with the snacks like that. I can't remember what I said next, but then he told me it would be hilarious if I wore it and I should lighten up. I gave it a nervous laugh and told him I thought it was funny too. This morning, he put both items on my dresser and said he's looking forward to seeing me in them when the guys are coming around tomorrow.
What? Okay.
I reminded him that he said it was a joke. He got a bit sulky and said he can't believe that I don't have a sense of humor. But from what he's saying, it's sounding like he's expecting me to wear it. I'm so confused because 1, I don't know if he's done this as a joke because his friends think I talk too much, or 2, he'd get off on me being humiliated. He says I'm being uptight and called me out for being an asshole, but I honestly don't think I'm being unreasonable. Am I the asshole?
Oh my God, no, he's the asshole. He is absolutely the asshole in that situation. So, oh man, where do I even start? So, first of all, consent, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't just be like, oh, hey, wear this in front of my dudes, right? Because A, you haven't asked her consent, and B, did you ask their consent? Like, do they want to see your wife like that? Like, you think it's funny, but like, do they think it's funny? Does she think it's funny?
Mm-hmm.
No. Second of all, that's Yeah, that's a red flag. That's a hell of a red flag to me. Where do I start? I feel like, yeah, he's the asshole in that situation. And I feel like people are weird about kink stuff because she's like, oh, he's totally vanilla. And I'm like, apparently not. He knew where to find that. He's not vanilla enough not to know where to find a latex outfit in his team's colors and a soccer ball gag. That's not easy. You didn't go to the corner store for that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, because I had to, you saying that, I'm really thinking, I'm like, they don't have soccer ball gags. They have regular.
You have to like find them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they have them, but like, that's means
like, that's like an online order where you Googled this shit.
You went to a specific store that had a plethora of different kind of ball gags and got that one. That's not your vanilla husband, just happened to go and find it and thought it was funny. No. And also the latex dress. I don't think those are like, you can't just get a latex dress in certain colors. Like maybe you could get a black one just out somewhere.
Oh, I don't know. That's not my kink. It's cute though, but I wouldn't even know where to even.
That's what I'm saying. Like I would know where to get a latex dress, but not like in specific team colors. That is very.
It's very themed.
Intentional. He'd been planning that for a while. But the thing is, like, ask her, man. Like, ask her. Like, don't. I feel like you can get me on this whole thing, me and my kink rules for everything. I have a thing about kink rules for everything, meaning you should have discussions with people, particularly your significant others, about sex stuff, but also about everything that you need to. But like upfront, clothed, like serious conversations about like, hey, what would you think of dressing sexy in front of my friends on our soccer day? Just ask her. Do you know what I mean? Like, then she can say yes or no, and then you can get into this is what I want you to wear. But to just be like, here, wear this, and you're an asshole for not wearing it, it's like, no, dude, you're the asshole for springing something like that on someone. Like, what?
I'm like, okay, latex dress. I'll even semi-excuse the latex dress. The fucking ball gag.
Yeah. Even the latex dress, though, that's like a very, like...
And I say slightly excuse the latex
dress.
Yeah. But
that's a very specific, like you said, that's a specific kink, right? Like, that's not like, I don't know. It would be funny. Like, so funny would be a maid's costume.
Oh, I thought if he put the dress on.
Well, that would be very, But like a maid's costume, right? That would be funny. Because it's like, oh, I'm cleaning up after you guys. Like, But even that, you would ask her. Because like you said, it's potentially humiliating if you haven't talked about it. You know what I mean? Like, what? No, he's the asshole. He's definitely the asshole. And frankly, I'm a little bit like, oh no, lady, you might need to. Because also, like, so for me, the red flag started with the like, well, we just decided that it worked better if I didn't work, and now I clean up after him and his friends on soccer day.
I knew it.
It was like
I felt the energy on this side of the table like suddenly like change.
It was just slowly climbing into something that I was like, So here's my thing. It's not like I'm like, oh, you should work or whatever. Like if it works better, it works better. But it was just like, there was this progression that felt a little bit like, oh, that's a little, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
And then with him, the ending made me feel like, okay, now did you actually have discussions about all of these other steps, or did they just happen the way that this dress just happened? Do you know what I mean?
You know what? I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's just a fucking catastrophe. And this is why we have to learn to communicate.
Yes, communication.
Because, sir, you could have definitely worked your way to the latex dress and ball gag had you done it the right way.
I'm saying, right.
Like, the fact that she said you're vanilla and then you come out of nowhere, I'm just like, you've been plotting and planning, and this is how you presented your kink. It's like, dude.
Yeah, that's what that sounds like to me. That sounds like he has a thing, and he's been trying to figure out how to get her to do it.
This is the way, like, trying to make it seem like a joke.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Here's the thing. If you're introducing anything to me in the bedroom, you're not about to make it funny. Like, to introduce the thing to me. I feel like there are certain things, like, you can laugh about.
Yeah,
because Carlton and I have laughed about things.
Right, yeah.
But we've never had this conversation.
Yeah.
I had no inkling whatsoever that you were into this, and then you just introduce it as a joke type of thing. Because now I'm like, well, I take certain things personally, so I'm just like, well, now, like, do you take me as a joke? Do you take our sex life as a joke? Like, what's so funny about this?
Well, also the way that sounded was like, it sounded like he wasn't joking. He said he was joking only when she got upset about it, is what that sounds like.
Oh, yeah. 1,000%. I'm just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, that was, he's the asshole.
He's
she
totally the asshole. Because, like,
flag.
Red flag people do that. That's what it is.
Exactly. Because, yeah, like, I mean, I think you should talk about it. Like, absolutely. There's like no I think about it. It's that's like a major kink thing, is like talking about it ahead of time. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, you can't just be like, oh, by the way, here's this butt plug. You're wearing it today. Like, that's not cool. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is uncool.
Amazing.
I mean,
Amazing. You're right. You're absolutely right.
You know, I mean, you know, and it's funny. So I like to sometimes, because this is me, when guys do stuff like that, I like to try to flip it, where it's like, I'll do it if you do it.
You and I have had this conversation.
Yeah. Only if you do it first, and then I'll do it. You know, like.
And then some people have done it first.
Yes, some people have. But then it's like, okay, cool. We're mutually, you know. But then it's like, I how do I say it? Guys have gotten, like, so I went on a date with this, who I'm not seeing anymore, but I went on a date with this guy who was talking about how he had to have more children because he felt like his genes should pass on, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, would you have kids? If you could physically push them out, would you do it? And he was like, oh God, no. And I was like, so why are you requiring that someone else do it? Like, if somebody wants kids, that's fine. But like, it's a requirement to date you? Like, bye, dude. You know, even if I wanted to, not with you. Like, what? You know?
Yeah.
But like that kind of thing where it's like you wouldn't do it yourself, but you're expecting your other person, you know, your partner to do things that you wouldn't even try. That you're like, oh God, no. Like, that seems shady.
It is
disrespectful.
It is.
I'm a big respect person. You know, respect and communication. Those two things are. I think they would fix a lot of like problems in the world. Both these types of problems, but also kind of the other type of problems we were talking about earlier. You know? Just like respect and communication. Just like, hey, what do you think about a ball gag? You know, she might have said yes if he asked.
She could. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who knows? Maybe she's been, like, holding things back because he's been so vanilla this whole time. They could have been, woo.
Yeah, man. They could have had a great night if he'd actually asked it the right way. Yeah. I don't know.
Some people are just terrible.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of ball gags.
I'm like, I've done it. It's all right.
Yeah.
I think I got to be in the mood.
Yeah.
When the mood, what is it? When the mood hits you?
When the mood strikes.
When it strikes. All right, so.
I love how we started on Juneteenth, we ended on kink. What is that?
A true Lynn and Melanie experience.
Social justice, filth. No.
I mean, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, hey, whatever works.
So normally Dom usually does an affirmation at the end of the thing, and I forgot to do an affirmation. But you were also like on the spiritual. Do you have like a simple affirmation? Like if you could think of like an affirmation that kind of encompasses.
I do have a good one. So my my teacher who passed away a couple years ago, Ia Uzuri, had me do these affirmations that were like, I am powerful, beautiful, and moving forward in the world. And I think that's a good one. Like, not just individually, but also for all of us. We are powerful, beautiful, and moving forward in the world.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the affirmation.
Yeah, that's a great one.
That's awesome. All right. So.
This was fun.
I'm glad you had a good time. Yeah. It took us a long time to get here, but we did it.
We did it. It happened.
So, let the people know, where can they find you?
Yes, so my website is literarylynn.com, and I'm on Twitter and Instagram at LRDBrown79. I know I need a more catchy, fun Twitter handle. Maybe Mel will find one for me.
We'll work on it.
But for right now, that's where I'm at. And then, literarylynn.com. You can find me as well. And, my writing is in, like I said, Sierra Magazine, Folders, Lonely Planet, Wanderlust, all over the place. So,
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah.
Dom's not here. I'm going to keep saying that because I'm like, Dom, but she's not feeling good today. So if you don't mind, tell Dom you hope she feels better.
Yes.
So you can find us on Spotify, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. We are Talk Your Shift across all platforms. If you hit the link tree in the Instagram bio, you will be able to have access to our email, but it is also talkyourshift@gmail.com. If you have any advice that you want, if you have any Am I the Assholes, if you just want to say hello, if you want to come on the show, we'll do all those things. So please give us a rating on Spotify, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, por favor. And thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we'll see you later. Bye.